My name is Tomer Ullman. I'm a postdoc working with Josh Tannenbaum and Liz Spelkin. I'm going to tell you, rather than stuff I've done over the past 5 years, a small project that we're starting now called Draping the Elephant. So we all know that humans have this sort of rich physical understanding of the world around them, and that we can trace this back into early infancy. So even infants have an understanding of solids and liquids. They know that solids will not go through one another, right? And if you I really should not throw this around. And if something disappeared, that would be surprising. They know that liquids will pour through these sort of porous containers and they should not maintain their shape. But so much for solids and liquids. What's the deal with cloth? What about cloth? Exactly a solid, rigid body, it's not exactly a liquid. If I were to drop a ball on a ducky, it would bump with the duck. And if I were to spill some water on the ducky, it would flow around it. But if I were to drop a piece of cloth on the ducky, it would drape it, right? So it seems like there might be this separate category, both for adults and for infants, of cloth. We have all sorts of different, and I could tell you all the sorts of things that you could do with cloth, but it might be a separate category, and this has been basically not at all studied with infants. But it's interesting, you might think that infants are able to reason about cloth. After all, they're surrounded by it from day one. And they encounter it all throughout their first year of life with towels, and they create a lot of laundry. And you can also up in these fine scientific baby bibs that say things like nuisance parameters. We sell these on our store online, you should check it out. So this might be a separate category with separate expectations, and we want to test whether infants and children have an understanding of cloth. But you might, at this point, ask yourself, but Tomer, wait a minute, do adults have an understanding of cloth? Are they even able? And I'm glad you asked that, because all the things that I'm telling you about are based on pioneering and ongoing work by Ilko Yildirim and Max Siegel, so you should ask them about what they're doing with cloth in adults, and they're using it to sort of test people's understanding, this richness of their object representation and things like that. Okay, here's an experiment that we ran with preschoolers. We wanted to start with 5-year-olds for different reasons that aren't that important right now, but we gave them studies that look like this. Look at that cup. Now back to me, now back to that cup. If I were to drop a piece of cloth on that mug or cup, would it look like the object on the left or the object on the right? Your left, your right. Who thinks it would look like the one on the left? Thanks. Who thinks it would look like the one on the right? Okay, great. So that was experiment 1. We did this for a whole bunch of different objects. Here's experiment 2, different group of kids. There's something under that cloth. What's under that cloth? Who thinks it's the thing on the left? Who thinks it's the thing on the right? Okay. Thank you. Okay, great. So we had different kids, 16 different kids in both of these experiments. And again, there's lots of different things you could say about this experiment, but let me show you the results. We gave children a score of 0 to 6 based on how many objects they were able to do correctly. And you can see that children are well above chance. That's their mean and 95% confidence interval. They're not at ceiling. So adults are basically at ceiling with this test, and there's interesting reasons why children are not. And that's for experiment 2, more or less the same thing. Interestingly, and I don't have time to get into this, some of these objects are easier and harder for kids. It's not just random noise. There's the same objects, the same couple pairs of objects are easy and hard across experiments 1 and 2, even though it's a different sort of thing, and different kids are doing them. And we also tried that with adults, and it seems to be a signal there. Okay, with the time that I have left, and again, I hope you're not convinced that children are using some sort of rich cloth representation where they're dropping internal mental simulations of bits of cloth falling on mugs. You might say there's all sorts of ways of solving this task. You're right, and we're exploring that. But one way that we're trying to look at this is pushing this down into younger ages, and this is a pilot now, where we're showing, and this is in combination with work with Coco over at Harvard. The previous was with Eliza Koso, who was here in the audience. We're showing infants the following sort of stimuli. These are 2 different stimuli. They're seeing about 6 of these in succession. I just wanted to give you a sense of the variance and variability. In each case, they're seeing 2 identical objects, and then there's sort of a sound, which is like bling, and then the cloth. And interestingly, one of those objects changes under the cloth. It's probably easier to detect the one on the bottom than the top, but you could probably also tell with the one on the top. Let's see it again. Now that you're sort of cued for it, which one is the one that's changing. And the thing for us is we have all sorts of different objects, some of them natural, some of them geometric, more biological, easier, harder, things like that. And we're looking to see, are kids looking longer at the object that changed, implying that they are tracking it in some way, implying that they have some expectation of what that object should look like under the cloth, and we're using an eye tracking paradigm, and we look at the dynamics of how it evolves over time. And again, there's lots and lots and lots to do here to convince you that what infants are doing is not just some sort of memory trace or something like that, but are actually reasoning about the full richness of cloth, and you want to talk more about that, come find me. There's lots more to say, but I think that about covers it for now. Thank you.